Okay, let's continue putting together this curve network. Here on the side, we've got this kind of side window piece that's kind of toward the back of the car. Let's get this in place.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to start off grabbing the CV curve tool, and we'll curve snap and create a curve. This kind of flows back here under this wing, like so. And then I'll come in here to the top view and kind of line things up a little better than they are.
All right, cool.
Say about like so. Okay, just kind of double check things out here. Now, we have kind of an interesting shape here because we have a curve that kind of arcs downward toward the base of the door.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll outline that. And then we'll just come back over here to our top view, clean it up a bit. Looks like I grabbed 2 CVs there. That's okay for that point, but here we just want 1. Let's tug all of this over. And I'll take this CV out of the mix. We don't really need an extra one there. Okay, looks like we have one more to put in that would go right about here. Let's jump up here to the top view. Oh, I see. That's actually going to be kind of inside the vent. You know what? I'm not going to worry about that curve right now.
Okay.
We'll kind of get to that once we start adding in surfaces and whatnot. Okay, so up here on top, let's go ahead and let me jump over here to the side view, actually, because what I want to do is I'd like to create sort of a central guide that runs down the middle of the car. So I'll just start up here. Where's that nice curve that runs right down the middle of the car? It's right, ends right there. What I'm going to do is create a curve that just flows right down the center of the car, back to the back, just so that gives me a nice line here in the top view.
Right.
And let's see, let's go ahead and create with the EP curve, just because it'll be a little bit easier on us. Create a simple curve that jumps straight across. Now let's check out our rear view. You'll notice there's a little bit of a vertical discrepancy here. Now what I'm going to do, this is something that I do from time to time when I'm modeling like this. I'm going to grab that front image plane. So let's go ahead and show our cameras. And it looks like if we scoot the whole thing down just a little bit, things will line up a bit better. And since we're only adding in the curves right now, it's not really too late to do this. Let's see. Let's slow down our virtual slider again. And right about there is a little better than it was. So it looks like it had got set to 0.4, so setting it back to 0 actually helped out a bit. Let's go ahead and switch over to the rear view. And this one looks like it could also be bumped down a little bit. So let's grab it. Its center Y is currently set to 0.13. So let's real carefully bring that down just a little. Probably right about in there. See, if I take it all the way down to 0 itself, we get that. That's not too bad, but it's still a little low, so we'll push it up just a tad. Somewhere right about in there. Yeah, it's better. Okay, so let me go up here to perspective, and we'll hide our cameras back out. So a couple of minor adjustments to the image planes now that we've been working with them for a couple of minutes. And we've got this first line set in. If I jump back here to the back of the car, we can kind of see where this is going to pop out. It's going to be a little tricky to see every single little thing that you're setting up here just because you have so many lines stacked on top of one another.
Right.
But try to keep it straight in your head without getting too confused. We start off with this edge, which is kind of like our first little panel back here in the back. Now we come down to the one that I just created, which lines up pretty well here at the tip. I just got to pull it down a little bit.
Also, don't be afraid to put them in layers.
Nah, absolutely. In fact, here in just a little bit, we're going to have to start putting things in layers to clean up just a tad. It's just what we've got going on right now is we have all of these horizontal lines, and we're trying to line up some curves to those, and it can be a little confusing if you're not careful.
Right.
So let's curve snap to here, snap straight over, or just click straight over. And then start lining up those CDs. And for the most part, everything's lining up just fine. Maybe round this out just a little bit. Add another one. And that one appears to be a bit further down, so I'll just move the whole curve at first. Kind of take an average there. Okay, and it's like one more. Get us down to the actual level of the trunk. Pull this down about like so. And just take a quick look at what we've got. Not bad. Looks like it's going to get us started pretty well. Kind of round some of these out a little bit. Okay. Now I'm going to add some curves to kind of put in the detail in between these, just so we can kind of see the indentions. You'll see what I'm talking about as I create them. What I did for this last one, I'll delete it and recreate it real quick. We just curve snap to the end of this curve, then curve snap to the end of this curve. And up here in 3D, you can see how it's kind of helping to show that crease as we change elevation there.
I gotcha.
This one will curve snap to the end of this curve, then just click back like so. Same story here. And here. And here. And see, now you can kind of start to see the difference in the elevations. Now, something else you can do is we could grab this. Let's grab each of these curves that makes kind of a separate panel here. We'll center up their pivots. And then we can duplicate each one and just kind of slide it back. I'll go ahead and just kind of snap this over. These are curves just to kind of help us see that those are separate plates. Just a way to keep things from getting too confusing for us later.
Right.
Not that we ever get confused, of course.
Never.
We're modelers. Modelers never get confused. I get confused all the time. Okay, so those snap all in there. And there we end up with each of the individual plates for the back, looking pretty sharp.
Cool.
Okay, now we have sort of a differentiation that takes place here, where one edge of this goes straight in, like so, as we go toward the back of the car, and I gotta kind of pull this edge down a little bit. And we can probably tug this out just a little bit more. So that creates a straight line up through there. And then we have a second edge that kind of shows where we change elevations. Now on the real car, let me see if I can dig through. I'm sure I've got a picture of the rear of this guy back here. Actually, that's not bad. So you see there's one edge, and then we have another edge that kind of goes right along the inside and then back up the inside of the trunk. So there's our first edge, and then we could create the second edge. I'm going to curve snap, then middle mouse click, and drag over. Okay, it won't let me do that. That's fine. I don't mind. Let's just go ahead and create a CD curve tool, or use the CD curve tool. That just makes it easier on me. And we'll split up like so.
Mm-hmm.
And again, just make sure you take the time to adjust all of those CVs. Now, these have a little bit of an elevation difference. How much, we don't really know. What we're probably going to have to do is just kind of create the curves, and then later on, when we start putting in surfaces, we may need to go back and edit, just kind of clean things up a little bit, but that's okay for the time being. We can also kind of interpret how far down that needs to be by looking at kind of the elevation of the plates back here in the back, kind of giving it a best guess, if you will. All right, let's grab the EP curve tool again, and I'll snap there and snap up to right about here where this crease starts to become kind of present. And that just that'll help us show that edge a little better. Okay, and we have a little edge that plugs right in there, so we'll make sure that's in place. And it looks like it needs to connect all the way over to the wing, so we'll just connect it over to the wing. You can see it starts to look more and more like the car each time you add a line to it.
Yeah.
Alright, now we get to the rear of the car, and we've got a lot of curves all stacked up on top of one another.
Mm-hmm.
You can definitely use some layers to start cleaning this up. One of the tricks that I like to use is, especially in something like this, where I'm looking at the back of an object and I know that I'm trying to focus on the back and trying to ignore what's going on in the front, is we'll come in and grab our camera's attribute editor, and we can adjust our clipping planes. So if I take my far clipping plane, let's just set it maybe, 5 is way too close, so let's say 50, 100, I'm starting to get there. 200, a little bit too far, so now we just kind of find that difference. So let's see, maybe 150, 140, 130, 100 flat, 101. So that's showing the back of the car, but it's chopped off what's going on up at the front.
Right.
So you can use that, just kind of bring that up. And then the only catch is that what you'll want to do is take your image plane, and let me show my cameras real quick, because this is kind of a proof of concept that I can't demonstrate because of my video card. You need to bring your image plane closer than your clipping plane.
Right.
Now, what I like to do in cases like that is I will adjust the alpha gain of my image, which on most video cards will make things go transparent. It won't work on this because I have an older NVIDIA card in this machine. Some of the newer NVIDIA cards work just fine. Some of the workstation cards will eat it like candy. What I'm going to do is we're going to start using layers. I just kind of want to bring up a couple of different techniques for handling that. So let's say everything from right about here. Now, this is most of the front area of the car. Just get rid of these guys because we don't need them. Let's go ahead and add these curves to this layer, and we'll rename the layer Front Curve Layer. Then we can hide those guys out. Now all we see is the back of the car.
And voila.
Voila. Very convenient for us. Now, let's see. Let's kind of start taking a look at what we see here. Okay, that's along the side of the door. I'm totally cool with that. Maybe grab some of those, and we'll add those as well. There we go. Just kind of clean things up just a tad. Okay, so we have all of this curvature here at the rear of the car. It would be nice if we had, again, a central guideline that split right down the center of the car.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm going to do is bring all my curves back up for a minute, and we have this guy who sits right here. I'm going to grab my CV curve tool, and let's snap a point right to him, zoom out, and all I'm going to do is follow just the basic contours of the back of the car. I'm not too worried about anything really being exact. Not at the moment, anyways. Because this is not a curve that we're really going to use for anything. In fact, I'm probably going to be deleting it out later. This is just a way for me to have something to base off of as I start to create the rear end of the car, just so I know right where the center is. Okay, so I'll start kind of up here at the top. Grab my EP curve tool, and we'll just start simple with some of the curves that we know just kind of need to be added in. We have this, which forms kind of a lip. What this is sort of an aerodynamic fold that pops up in the back. You can kind of make it out right here. And what this does is this folds up for added downforce on the car. And we'll adjust the curvature of this second curve, because the base is straight so it can fold up, but the second one has some curvature to it. Now this curve is actually the edge of the trunk itself, and that is more of a contour curve than it is something we necessarily need to... it's not like a crease, it's not going to be something visible. Let me go ahead, I'm going to snap this in Z straightforward so it's a nice flowing curve. Let me get my EP curve again, and bring those over. Clean up about like so. Now always look over here in the 3D view. Let me hide my cameras out so I can declutter the viewport a little bit. Okay, overall, generally, I like it, but probably a good idea to take this curve and bring it down a little bit. So I'll center its pivot, and we'll just curve snap it down like so. Probably tug it up just a little bit, but remember that this curve here in the middle doesn't really follow the contours of the car at all.
Right, right.
It's just kind of there to show us where the center line is for the car.
Guideline.
That's right. Okay, so let's see. From here, grab our EP curve again, our EP curve tool, and I'll just make a nice curve straight over. Now this should be relatively flat, so what I'm going to do is kind of take an average of my drawn line to get something that's nice and flat there. And then we'll make another one that goes right up here to the end of this. You can kind of see where that goes to the inside of that crease there that we created in the back.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see what I'm creating. It's just a line that jumps up right to here. Now this is going to need some curvature to it, which we can see if we come back here. So I'll need to grab my CVs, make a few adjustments. Now that's our trunk, if I'm not so much mistaken. Let me get this out of the way. Yeah, that's kind of the area of the trunk that has the Lamborghini logo right in the middle of it, which we can see here, right in this area. So let's see, the way I'd want to do this, you know, like if I was actually modeling this, hee. And let's see, I'll just round this out. Pull that out about like so. And we'll call that even. We're going to have to kind of average things out a little bit as we go across here. Probably not so far. I'll just kind of make a few assumptions. Now, up here along the top, this curve that I actually based this off of does need to be rounded out a little bit, so I need to make sure I do that. Okay. Now I'll snap this to the end of this curve and then just adjust my construction to compensate for that. Press 3 so I can see how round everything is. That's not too bad. Okay, I'm going to grab the CV back here at the end of this curve, push it back a little bit because I'm kind of looking back here. I just completed this line, so now I have to jump up and kind of create the edge that runs around the brake lights. What I'd like to do is start creating the cutout for the brake lights first, though. So let's jump back here to the back. And let's see what sort of editing needs to be done here. Looks like that's just a straight edge, despite what the drawing is saying. So I'll go ahead and follow what's actually there on the real car. I'm going to create a new NURBS curve with the CV curve tool. I'm going to curve snap that first point, and it looks like it just kind of flows down at an angle, so we'll do the same thing. And then sort of pinches in there at the corner. So we'll pull over to right about here, and we'll end this curve, make a few adjustments for curvature's sake. I'm going to take this curve and tweak it just a little bit, kind of pull that up. You'll notice I'm kind of freeforming this a little bit based off my drawings and what I'm seeing, especially when you're dealing with hand-drawn image planes, which... By that, I'm kind of referring to any time that you have image planes that aren't going to exactly line up, because in a lot of cases they won't.
Right.
Just as a reminder, I know I've said all of that before.
Yeah. I've had that happen many times.
Yeah, anybody who models for a living is going to tell you it's just kind of the nature of the beast.
Yeah. Especially when you get friends that want you to make something for them.
Oh, sure. You get hired to do a job. Here, model this thing. Oh, sure. What's it look like? Well, kind of like this. And that's what you got to work from.
Yep.
Like, if any of you out there have the hopes of joining a mod team on the internet.
Yes, I got sucked into that once.
Yeah, there will be no clean image planes for you.
Once.
And now notice, as we're talking, I'm just kind of cleaning up some lines. I'm doing something kind of interesting here. I know what this looks like based off the drawings and based off the actual images of the car. So now I'm just kind of interpreting that and cleaning this up so it flows as closely as I can make it.
Right.
Okay, so let's see. Back over here, we kind of split down and just curve underneath the car. Back out a little bit, this kind of line here. So I'll start off by curve snapping to the end here, and then we'll just arc outward, and then back down underneath. And it looks like I could probably pull this out just a little bit more than it is. Like the drawing might be a little overly rounded right there at that corner, which is fine. Now let's grab CVs here. And just move them in Z for now. Get these kind of lined up with where the edge of the car dies off. Actually, you know, for penciled in image planes, these are lining up on the whole very well.
Yeah.
Just a couple of little areas here and there where they don't.
Well, if they don't really match up, that's usually just something that only you will notice.
Right. And then your job is just to, model it out and make sure that nobody's attention is drawn to that.
Right.
Okay, so we've got the brake light area starting to come to life back here. Let's go ahead and kind of take a look at this. Been pretty good so far.
Cool.
Let's come back here to the back again. And this time I'll grab the EP curve tool, and I'll just continue this split that goes down back here. And then I'm going to split straight across. I'm going to do something kind of interesting. I'm going to hold down Shift and X. So what I'm going to do, what that does is that creates a point that is at the center of the grid line, but also straight across from that original point. And then we'll just come up here to the top view and clean that up. In fact, pretty sure that needs to come out just a little bit further. We should be lining up with that guy out there.
Ah, I see. Okay.
Yeah, I'm just following the wrong line.
Yeah. Well, that confused me too. So.
Yeah. I never get confused.
Never.
All right. So that's looking pretty good. Now we come back in here, and it looks like this needed to be pulled out and wasn't. So we'll just make the most of that. In fact, what we can do, and I do this every now and then when I notice that I've done something like that, we'll just create a new curve for it that snaps from here to there, and that does most of the work for us. Okay, now another simple single span curve we can create goes in between these 2 points. Now let me show you on the perspective view where that was. It's in between where this curve ended and this guy here, and then what I just created was this little line right here, just to make sure everybody's on the same page as me. So now that we've got that, I'll press Enter, and now we can create another set of curves that kind of goes along the outside of the brake light. So there's a couple of ways we could do this. Let me try it this way, just see if this will work. Let's go ahead and center the pivot on this curve. I'll duplicate it, move it out just a bit, and then we'll just adjust our CVs a little bit, and that should actually work out really well. And should stay nice and clean. And then we can do the same thing over here. Center pivot, Control D, we'll slide this out a ways, and then just go back in and adjust those CVs accordingly. So we'll pull this out a little more, grab this CV, snap out here to the end. And looking pretty good so far. I don't think that there's going to be that much of a perfect flat surface there.
Right.
So we need to kind of maybe smooth this out a little bit. I'll try that in object mode for starters, and then we'll grab CVs and just connect everything back. And I think that'll end up looking a lot closer. Though it should be real easy if I need to make adjustments to that to adjust those later on once I have polygons in place. Okay. So let's see, we've got that line. Let's go ahead and create, again, with the EP curve tool. And we'll snap straight across over to here. In fact, let me back up one. Back up again. Let's recreate that curve. Curve snap to that point, like so. Let's double check up here in the top view. And it looks like this actually needs to be kind of receded in from the trunk area. So now we'll arc that out a little bit. And that looks about correct with what we have here. Now we have noticed there's kind of an indentation under here, which it looks like this is probably a blinker or something. I'm not sure. It's got some sort of coloration. I mean, that could be a blinker too, for all I know. I've never driven behind one of these. Though almost certainly if I saw one on the road, I would stay behind it. Let's go ahead and we'll just continue this curve here, straight down. Let's say down to about like here. And you can kind of see even here on the side drawing that this is also going to be a little bit indented inwards.
Right.
So we'll give that as good of a shot as we can. Now let's start taking a look over here. Now notice my wheel well curves stick way out here outside the drawing, and the reason for that is that once we get back here toward the back of the wheel well, we start curving inward, which is something we didn't do when we were actually putting this together ourselves. So let's do that now. I'll grab these CVs, and we'll just kind of pull these inward. Flow along that curvature we see there. And same thing with this outer curve as well. That actually got most of it right there. Let's see, maybe grab this. We'll grab all of these upper CVs and just tug those out just a little bit. Grab these front CVs, pull those in. That should end up flowing a lot nicer than it did before. And let's see, we have this outer curve here at the brake light. For now, we can just simply connect that back here, and things are almost lining up a little better than it was. Still requires a little bit of adjustment, but also keep in mind of just kind of remember what you're looking at. Like here, you'll notice that we have wrapped underneath the car. So this leading edge that we see here in the top view, that's just kind of an edge that doesn't really exist aside from anything but, well, curvature in this case. Now there is a crease here toward the back, right there. So that could also be it as well. Let's go ahead and create this curve snap to right here, then curve snap straight over like so, and let's just see how close that got. Wow. That got really close.
Yeah.
So I think that'll work out just fine in our case. And bring up the rest of this for just a moment. Oh, yeah.
Oh, my.
Looking very nice.
Yeah.
Okay, now continuing, we have the back bumper, which is a bit interesting. Let's go ahead and create another CV curve. I'm going to start it back here because the inside of the bumper, once you get toward the middle of it, has this little slope up to cut a hole for the exhaust pipes.
Right.
So just kind of remember that while you work. Simple 4 CVs. Looking nice. Now all of these need to be adjusted a bit, pulled down here to where the bumper actually sits. And we can make a little bit of a elevation change here, nothing too special. Again, we have a little bit of interpretation we have to do, but that's okay. By now, we are all totally used to that. Let's go ahead and center the pivot of this curve. Let's move it, duplicate, pull a copy of it straight down, because we basically have the same thing for the top and bottom of the bumper, which we can also kind of verify here. We have basically the same thickness all the way down. So now what I'll do is I'll grab my EP curve again, and we'll, well, that's actually a CV curve. Let's get an EP curve tool. And we'll curve snap from here down like so. And then we can curve snap from there straight back to the inside of the body. And we end up with almost, should be pretty exact to what's actually there. We may need to make some adjustments here. It looks like we do actually. Let's take a look at our photo. Yeah, that comes way in. Whoops. So that's Zach jumping the gun. Did everybody like the sound of that? No problem, though. We just take this curve and nuke it, this curve and nuke it, just because it'll be faster. And we can curve snap to here, straight to here, press Y, curve snap here, down to here, done.
Cool.
And that creates that bit of the bumper. Now the bumper starts doing some interesting things once we get to here, but we'll get down to that. The next thing that I'd like to handle is this area here, where we kind of get over to the license plate, or where it's mounted anyways. I don't really have a license plate going on here in this model. And that goes along. We don't have a whole lot of information back here, so we can't rely on that too heavily.
Right.
But we can create a curve that snaps here, and then another curve that is going to look like it's snapping here, but I don't really want it to. Because we have something kind of interesting here. Let me show you what we got. In fact, let me take a look here in our image. Notice this is flush down here on the bottom,
right.
but then indents in, like it's kind of receded backward, so you have a place to put that really cool license plate. So we can do the same thing here. We've got our flush area down here. All we got to do is grab the CVs of this second curve that we've made and start pulling those inward. Now here's a trick for you. If we do this, notice this line is no longer perfectly straight. Something we can do as an alternative to moving individual CVs is we can grab our pivot point and curve snap it to the base of this curve and then just rotate the curve inward a little bit. Of course, that's going to make the curve appear to be a little bit too short because you've rotated it.
Right.
All you got to do now is scale it up a little bit. And we'll maybe rotate it back inwards just a little bit more. Scale up. And there you go. Okay. Now let's take a look back here. That looks pretty flat, even though we are kind of up above it. So what I'm going to do is grab the control vertices of my bumper. Now I want them to stay parallel. So here's the deal. This one looks pretty good. The bottom one looks like it goes underneath the drawing, but because I want these to stay the same thickness, I'm not really going to move either one. Okay. We'll worry about that at modeling time. Because I really think it's looking just fine back here, so I'm not too worried about that. Maybe a little bit of upward curvature, but again, though, we want that parallel nature. We want them to stay the same thickness apart. So if you move one, be sure you move the other one the same distance.
Right.
And then it's all no big deal. That probably looks a little bit better. Yeah, subtle, but it helps out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's see. Let's go ahead and create, with the EP curve tool, a little curve that'll connect these 2 points together. I'd like to edit this a little bit so it looked a little bit cleaner. Because it looks like I've gone just a tad overboard back here. Let's check over here in the side view. Side view, it looks okay. Over here, it looks a little bit low. So what I'm going to do is...
You made it pointy.
Yeah. Well, pointy's okay in this case because it probably does kind of...
Yeah.
Yeah, it comes to a little bit of a point down there, which is okay. I'm just going to kind of take the average distance here. And then we'll just straighten these guys up like so. That should help that out quite a bit. The underside of the bumper, I'm not really all that stressed about at the moment because it's pretty flat. I mean, even in these images, you can see it's primarily a flat surface.
Right.
So we can create that with polygons later on with no effort because polygons are flat. Okay, so from here, let's go ahead and start getting ready to create that opening for our exhaust pipes. So let's see, take this vertex and we'll kind of pull it over here and double check things back here. We start off with all of this kind of being flush, like that's going to cut back into the bumper, it looks like.
Mm-hmm.
So we got to kind of remember that. That also, just something for me to be aware of. Okay, let's go ahead and we'll make a single split like so, see how that turned out. Probably just round that out a little bit. Should help. Now we'll make another one that goes all the way to the inside. And we'll just kind of leave that for now. And let's see. Oh, that's just that kind of basic guideline that I made that doesn't really mean anything anymore. Let's see. I do have kind of the bottom of the bumper I'd like to line up a little bit. So we'll create a curve that goes right in like so. And in the side view, that should be almost impossible to see. And if I center its pivot, it looks like it is impossible to see, which is fine. Let's fix that a little bit. We'll grab this vertex, we'll tug it outward a little bit. In fact, what I'll do is I'll just kind of use the top view as a guide, because I don't really know where it ends. I don't have any really good footage of it.
Right.
Okay, so that looks pretty good. We'll create another curve that connects from the end of this up here to the end of this. We're starting to get a more apparent opening for those exhaust pipes back there in the back. Can probably take this curve at this point and delete it out. I don't really need it anymore. It has served its purpose. We can grab this curve that we made here that indents in for the license plate, duplicate it, and then slide it over so that it snaps all the way to the end, because we have that same thickness and that same angle as we go in all the way to the center of the car, so that should work out well there. And let's make sure, yeah, okay. I think that'll do for now until I see it in polygons and decide I need to change it later. And I think that is going to be the bulk of what I want to do with the rear end, because all I need is to outline the basic shapes of the geometry. I believe I've done that. So let's go ahead and bring up the whole car for just a minute. It's not a bad idea every now and then, if you're curious, to grab all of your curves, group them, duplicate the group anyway, and then set the scale of that group to -1. So then you kind of get an idea of what the whole car is going to look like.
Swank.
So undo all of that when you're done. Really, I think that's going to wrap it up for this video. And with that, I believe the curve network itself is pretty much complete. Let me kind of take another gander around. I hate to be wrong about that. But, I mean, if you are wrong, the worst thing that happens is while you're modeling with polygons, you're like, I could use another curve there. So you create one. And we may very well do that while we're working. So I'm going to go ahead and say that the curve network is finished, and let's move on and start creating a model. Thanks a lot.